Yes, this video is actually sponsored by Squarespace. What would F1 be without money? I'll tell you what. But something that I often wonder about is, where does all the money that F1 pulls in even come from? And the answer to that is through the sale of TV rights, race tickets, sponsorship, and claiming all the money I make on certain videos. But let's talk about sponsorship, because that's actually interesting. Sort of. Kind of. I think. So, how do you go about putting your name on an F1 car or on the side of the track, and why would you want to do it? Let's discuss, shall we? First thing you want to do before putting your name into F1 is think about where you want it to be written. The most obvious answer to that question would be to write it on the side of a car, as it's fairly easy to guess that the cars get the most media attention. If you wanted to do what, say, Petronas have done and have your name not only written on the side of the car but also mentioned in the team's name, then that's going to cost you about $200 million a year. But what do you even get for that sort of money? Well, if you're paying that sort of money, then you'd be right to assume that the team in question will want to cater to your every need. And that of course means you'll be flown out to every race you want to go to, and you can sit in the back of the garage and stuff. But you can get treatment like that for about 1% of that money, so what do you get for the extra $198 million? As I've already mentioned, you get your name written on the side of the car, and if you've chosen a good team to sponsor, then that means your name is going to be seen on a lot of TV. And I mean, pretty much everyone who's watched F1 in the recent years will have heard of Petronas, and that's thanks to the huge lengths they've gone to in order to sponsor Mercedes. However, I'm yet to see the Mercedes car win a race and instantly think, yes, I'm going to buy a bottle of Petronas Cintium and feed it to my car. And I think that's normal. Something people don't realize about adverts is that they don't want you to pick up the phone immediately after seeing the ad and buy everything from the company in question. But they do want you to remember their name next time they want to buy some of the product they make. If you're in a shop and there's some Petronas oil next to some shoddy own brand stuff, then you're more likely to buy the Petronas stuff, because you've seen it in F1 and therefore you sort of want to be a part of that. Or maybe that's just me and sponsorship's just a tax dodge. Another fun thing about sponsoring a team in this way is that you'll almost certainly get other privileges with it. Mercedes love to tell us all about Petronas on their YouTube channel, and any of my fellow Sky Sports viewers will no doubt have seen that Petronas advert that's voiceovered by Lewis Hamilton. All good promotion, don't you think? Another way to get your name heard by F1 fans is to find a medium-sized F1 YouTuber and give them money to talk about your product, which is exactly what Squarespace have done. Squarespace build websites, and they look good. Simple. If you're doing anything that involves selling stuff, talking about stuff, or making stuff, then you need a good website to show it all off. When people want to hire a photographer to take pictures of their wedding, or their dog, or their enormous collection of Pokemon figurines, then they'll probably look at websites first. They want to see examples of your work, and one of the best ways to present these examples in a way that isn't boring for your next customer is to whack them all on a Squarespace site. Luckily for you, Squarespace's templates make it super easy to make a good looking and actually useful website. And because you can customize them to your liking, they won't end up looking the same as every other one. So if you want to try your hand at websiting, then go to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you've made a website that you want to share to the world, then go to squarespace.com/JohnWarren and use code JohnWarren for 10% off your first website or domain. Anyway, let's get back to the F1 stuff. If you decide that $200 million a year is slightly out of your price range, then how about you sponsor the entire sport? Surely having your name written on the pit wall a couple of times can't be that expensive. $500 million. But hey, you sure do get a lot of value for that money. I mean, Rolex have their clock shown every time a session's due to start, DHL get to say they help take F1 all over the world, Pirelli make every single tire that goes onto an F1 car, which is kind of a bad thing at the moment. AWS get their highly sophisticated software to come up with shit like this, and Saudi Aramco get to write their name all over the walls and floors. No doubt if F1 ever raced indoors, they'd write their names on the ceilings as well. F1 have a huge social media presence nowadays, largely thanks to Liberty Media, and oh boy do these companies get a piece of that action. We have the DHL Fastest Pit Stop and Fastest Lap Award, which is uploaded to YouTube after every race. We have the Aramco Power Rankings, which never make any sense but still get a lot of attention. We have the Pirelli Pole Position Award, and we have the Crypto.com Overtake Award. It doesn't matter that all of these awards are either arbitrary or rewarded anyway, because F1's made a business out of the things they do anyway. Go them. Obviously, this is a very big business. Everyone sends parcels, fits new tires to their car, and owns multiple Rolexes. So these sponsors are household names, and through the F1 deals they can become even more well known. At least, that's the goal. Whether or not these companies get their money's worth is up to them to decide. Another way to sponsor Formula 1 is to be a clothes manufacturer. Puma sponsor Mercedes, and it's not uncommon to see Lewis Hamilton show up to the track wearing a pair of limited edition Pumas. In fact, I recently saw a picture of him wearing a pair of Puma X Mr. Doodle trainers, and I tried to buy a pair. Sadly, they were sold out because they're limited edition, and that's sort of what happens with limited edition things, but that was a time I was genuinely influenced by something I've seen around F1. Max Verstappen always shows up to the track in a pair of white Pumas for a similar reason. I mean, I bought a pair of white Air Forces instead, but oh well, they look the same if you squint enough. You often see F1 drivers riding around on electric scooters now, and guess what? That's Adam Norris's company that makes them. If a pure electric scooter is good enough for an F1 driver, then it must be good enough for us normies. But to discuss the title of this video, what if F1 was sponsored by Squarespace? Well, it depends to what extent they were to sponsor. If they were to do what Aramco do and write their name everywhere, then no doubt they'll get a lot of exposure from that. But things like that work better for some companies than they do others, which is why Petronas want to sponsor Mercedes while Rolex want to sponsor F1. I'm in no position to say which would work better for Squarespace, but the short answer would be that Squarespace's name would be seen and heard by every F1 viewer. And as a result, they'd get a lot more customers, and we'd have a lot more good-looking websites on the internet. Squarespace would be able to make a lot more money, obviously, and that's the same motivation for them sponsoring this video, and the same motivation for companies like DHL or Aramco or Rolex to sponsor Formula 1. Because F1 isn't just a business for F1, it's a global advertisement board for every other business that puts its name into the ring. And without these sponsors putting in the money they do, F1 would not be able to operate. After all, flying 20 of the fastest cars in the world to a new continent every other weekend is not a cheap business. Could you or I ever afford to sponsor a Formula 1 team? Absolutely not. But for the people that can afford it, I think that F1 sponsorship, or in fact any sort of sports sponsorship, is a great way to tap into the passion that fans have for that sport and turn it into money for yourself. But yeah, I hope you found that informative or interesting in some way. If you didn't, then now's your cue to fuck. Thank you for watching though, subscribe if you want to see more like this, and I will see you all later.